Tens of millions of adults past 40 have high blood pressure without feeling it. The evening ring that won't budge, the sock marks by 5. Most people can't tell if that swelling is nothing or the first sign of a clot or a failing kidney. Today, you'll learn how to tell them apart and how to protect yourself. I'm Sophia Hart. I spend my days inside the research most people never get handed, and I turn it into plain language about what's happening in the body you're actually living in after 40. So let's start with what you already know in your bones. You wake up, and you feel fine. By the afternoon, your shoes are tight. By evening, the ring turns hard on your finger, and when you peel off your socks, the elastic has pressed a groove into your skin that takes an hour to fade. Your face looks a little fuller than it did at breakfast. Your legs feel heavy, like you're carrying water you never drank. And here's what you've probably been told. Cut the salt. Drink more water. It's just your age. Maybe you tried all 3 and nothing much moved. Let me say this plainly, because almost no one does. This isn't your fault. Your body is doing exactly what biology built it to do. It's just doing it under conditions that changed while you weren't looking. And you are not imagining how common this is. In a 2021 study from the University of Rochester, researchers tracked nearly 20,000 American adults and found that lasting swelling in the feet and ankles is one of the most frequent and most quietly dismissed complaints after midlife. Roughly 1 in 5 older adults lives with it. 1 in 5. That's not a rare condition. That's a room full of people, all told the same 3 things, all watching the same 3 things fail. So let's reframe the whole picture, because the swelling was never the real story. Every hour of your life, your body is doing something you never think about. Fluid is constantly seeping out of your bloodstream into the spaces around your cells. That's normal. That's supposed to happen. And just as constantly, a second network pulls that fluid back, drains it, returns it to circulation. You have a whole system built for this. It's called your lymphatic system, and it's the closest thing you own to indoor plumbing. Quiet, invisible, thankless, and absolutely essential right up until the moment it starts to back up. When that drainage keeps pace, you feel nothing. When it falls behind, the fluid just sits. And that pooling, the tight ring, the sock lines, the heavy legs, is not a lack of willpower, and it is not 1 glass of water too many. It's a flow problem. Now here's the part that should make you sit up. That exact same puffiness can mean almost nothing, or it can be the first visible sign that something underneath is straining. A vein that stopped moving fluid the way it once did, a kidney working under load, a heart pushing harder than it should, a clot forming where none belongs, and you cannot tell which one it is by looking. You can't tell by pressing a thumb into your ankle and watching the dent. The harmless version and the serious version can look identical, feel identical, show up at the very same hour of the evening. You've stood there and wondered, haven't you? Is this just me getting older, or is this something? That question is the whole reason you're here. Because there is a way to tell them apart. A specific set of signals that separates the ordinary kind from the kind that means you pick up the phone today. And there's a reason all of this arrives now, in your 40s and 50s, and not at 25. A shift happening beneath the surface that has almost nothing to do with how much water you drink or how much salt sits on your plate. I'll walk you through both. Stay with me. So let me hand you the most useful thing I can in the next few minutes. A filter. A way to look at your own swelling and know whether it's the ordinary kind or the kind that means you stop and make a call. Start with the good news, because it fits most of you. The everyday kind has a signature, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It shows up in both legs, both ankles, roughly even on each side. It builds through the day and eases by morning, after a night lying flat gave gravity a rest. It's soft. It doesn't scream. No sharp pain, no heat, no redness, no fight for breath. It tracks with the long flights, the hot afternoons, the days you sat or stood too long. That pattern, both sides, worse by evening, softer by dawn, is almost always harmless. That's the version the rest of this video is about. Now the tone shifts, because there's a second pattern, and this is the one no one should wait out. Here's the question that matters most. Has one leg ever swollen and not the other? One ankle, one calf, ballooning while its twin stays normal, with an ache, a tightness, skin that feels warm or looks flushed. That lopsided, sudden swelling can mean a clot deep in a vein of your leg, what clinicians call deep vein thrombosis. And that is not a wait and see. This is where I want a hard number in front of you, because it's why I'm being this blunt. According to the CDC, blood clots in the veins strike as many as 900,000 Americans a year, and up to 100,000 die from them. And here's what should kill any urge to sleep on it. In about 1 in 4 people, the first sign that a clot has broken loose and reached the lungs is sudden death. No buildup, no second warning. That's why a leg that swells fast, on one side, with pain or warmth, is a same-day phone call, not a let's see how it looks tomorrow. A few other signals belong in that same category. Swelling with shortness of breath, chest tightness, or waking up gasping. That points toward the heart, and it's urgent. Swelling that climbs toward the belly, or several pounds appearing in a couple of days, or far less urine than usual, foamy urine, or a puffy face at dawn, those can flag the heart or the kidneys, and they earn a prompt visit. Skin that breaks open over the swelling or turns hot and red and spreads, that's infection, and it won't clear on its own. Notice the thread running through all of them. The dangerous kind usually breaks the familiar pattern. It comes on fast instead of slow, picks one leg instead of both, hurts instead of just feeling heavy, which is exactly why people miss it. Years of ordinary evenings trained you to think it's just swelling, so you shrug off the one time it isn't. So here's your filter: clean. Both sides, gradual, softer by morning, no pain, no breathlessness, ordinary kind. You can exhale. One-sided, sudden, painful, or tangled up with your breathing, your urine, or your skin, that's the kind you don't sit on. Most of you are in the first group, which drops us right onto the real question, the one that's been sitting under this whole video. If it's the ordinary kind, why now, at 45, when your body ran all of this without a second thought at 25? The answer surprised even me when I first dug into the research, and it starts with something that began shifting years before you ever felt a ring go tight. That's next. So here's the answer to why now, and it surprised me because I went in looking for one culprit and found 3. Your fluid balance was never held up by a single system. It was held up by several, all working quietly in the background. And the cruel little joke of your 40s and 50s is that these systems don't fail one at a time, politely, so you can adjust. They start slipping across the same stretch of life, and they stack. Start with the drainage itself. Those vessels that pull fluid out of your tissues and return it to your bloodstream aren't passive tubes. They have tiny muscular walls that squeeze in a rippling motion up the line, pushing fluid uphill against gravity all day long. It's an active pump, and it runs without you ever knowing. But a 2019 review of how this network ages spelled out exactly what changes. The muscular walls weaken, the squeeze gets slower, and pumping efficiency drops, so fluid gets left behind in the tissues. Picture an old pump that still runs but no longer builds the pressure it once did. The water doesn't stop moving, it just backs up a little more each year. And here's the quiet part. This slowdown has no symptom of its own. By the time you notice a ring going tight, that pump's been softening for a long while. Now the second pump, and yes, you have a second one. Your calf muscles are sometimes called your second heart, and that's not poetry. Every step you take, those muscles clamp down on the vessels in your legs and drive fluid upward, back toward your chest, beating gravity with each stride. It's one of the most important pumps you own, and it only works when you move. But 2 things happen after 40. You steadily lose muscle, a slow erosion clinicians call sarcopenia, so there's less power behind the pump. And modern life sits you down for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, so it barely gets switched on. Let me ask you plainly, how many hours did you actually spend on your feet yesterday? Less muscle, driven less often, that's not laziness. That's the debt quietly restacking against a system you never had to think about before. Quick thing before the third piece, because it's the big one. If this is the kind of plain, research-backed explanation you wish came standard, the science translated straight, without the fear and the noise, subscribe. That's the whole reason this channel exists, for people who actually want it. Now the third change. This is the one the title of this video points at, and almost no one connects it to their swelling. For years, a hormone worked in the background of all of this, keeping your blood vessels relaxed and your kidneys handling salt and water the way they did in your 30s. Somewhere in your 40s, for women especially, that hormone begins to withdraw. And when it pulls back, the way your body grips onto sodium and fluid shifts, not down in your ankles, but upstream, at the level of the kidney, where the real decisions about water get made. It's the missing piece that turns cut the salt from wrong advice into incomplete advice. I'm going to name that hormone and show you exactly what it does to your fluid, your sodium, and the blood pressure number from the very start of this video, because they are all the same story. That's next. The hormone is estrogen, and I need the men watching to stay with me because this turns to you in a minute. It's not only a women's story. For decades, estrogen did quiet, unglamorous maintenance on the exact systems we've been discussing. It kept the walls of your blood vessels relaxed, partly by boosting a molecule called nitric oxide, the signal that tells vessels to loosen and let fluid move easily. And it kept a firm hand on the part of your hormonal system whose whole job is to make your kidneys hold on to salt. Estrogen was the referee, keeping that salt-hoarding signal from running the show. Then, somewhere in your 40s, for women moving toward and through menopause, that hormone starts to leave. And when the referee walks off the field, the salt-holding signal gets louder. Here's the shift that changes everything, and it's the whole reason the title of this video reads the way it does. The problem was never simply how much salt sat on your plate. The problem is that your body began answering that salt differently. The same amount you ate at 32 now gets gripped harder, held longer, with more water dragged along behind it. Scientists have a name for this changed response: salt sensitivity. And it means two people can eat the identical dinner and hold fluid completely differently, depending on where their hormones are. Researchers at the Medical College of Georgia pulled this evidence together in a 2023 review and were blunt about it. Women react more strongly to salt than men at every age, and menopause sharpens it, precisely because the hormone that had been softening that reaction is now gone. In its place, a salt-retaining hormone called aldosterone gains the upper hand, telling the kidneys to keep sodium when they'd normally release it. Now, remember the number from the first 15 seconds of this video, the tens of millions carrying high blood pressure they can't feel? This is the bridge. That silent rise and the puffiness in your ankles are not two separate problems. They're the same shift wearing two different faces. When your body holds more sodium, water follows, and the pressure inside your vessels climbs, quietly, over years. That upward drift after menopause can take anywhere from 5 to 20 years to fully surface, which is exactly why almost no one connects the tight ring on their finger to the reading on the cuff at their next checkup. Men, here's your part, as promised. You run on a version of this balance too. Your body makes estrogen from testosterone, and both move as you go through your 40s and 50s. The evidence is clearest in women, but you are not exempt. Your own slow hormonal drift nudges the same salt and pressure machinery, just on a quieter timeline. The swelling, the creeping pressure, the biology underneath doesn't check your gender at the door. So let this land, because it's the point of everything so far. If you cut the salt and barely moved the needle, that was never a failure of willpower. You were fighting a hormonal change with a single grocery store lever, and that lever was never going to be enough on its own. Which leaves the only question that still matters. Knowing all of this, what can you actually do about it? That's next, and it's the part the research is surprisingly clear on. Here's the good news, and it's the payoff for sitting through the biology. Because we mapped exactly what's breaking down, the fixes aren't vague wellness advice. Each one targets a specific part of the machine, and the research behind them is clearer than you'd expect. Start by waking up your second heart. Remember those calf muscles that pump fluid back up your legs, the ones that only fire when you move? That's your most direct lever, and it costs nothing. The enemy isn't effort, it's stillness. Sitting for hours without a break lets the pump go idle and fluid settle. So break it up. Stand and move every half hour or so, take the walk, and something as small as rising onto your toes a few times at your desk switches that pump back on. In the evening, let gravity help instead of fight you. Get your legs up, above the level of your hips, for a while. None of this is dramatic. It's just turning a pump back on that modern life left switched off. Now, the salt conversation, because I told you cut the salt was only half the story. Here's the other half. The lever most people ignore isn't sodium at all. It's potassium, the mineral that helps your kidneys release the sodium they're clinging to. And the evidence is genuinely striking. In a 2021 trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine, researchers followed nearly 21,000 adults for 5 years. One group simply swapped their regular salt for a version cut with potassium. That single change lowered their risk of stroke by 14%, major cardiovascular events by 13%, and death from any cause by 12%. And here's the part that reframes everything. The benefit tracked more with the potassium they added than with the sodium they removed. You get that same mineral from leafy greens, beans, potatoes, and a dozen ordinary foods. But this one comes with a hard line, and I won't soften it. Potassium is not safe for everyone. If your kidneys are compromised or you take certain blood pressure medications, loading up on it can be genuinely dangerous, which is exactly why that trial excluded those people. So this is a conversation to have with a professional, not a swap you make blind. If your ankles ever sent you the kidney signals we covered earlier, that caution is doubly yours. The third lever is the long game. That slow muscle loss we named is what weakens your second heart over the years. So movement that actually challenges your muscles, paired with enough protein to rebuild them, keeps that pump strong long past your 40s. You're not chasing a physique. You're maintaining a pump. One honest caveat over all of it. This is general education for the ordinary, everyday kind of swelling. If you're in the red flag group from earlier, or you're managing a diagnosed heart, kidney, or vascular condition, your own clinician's plan comes first, always. And here's where this opens into something bigger than a tight ring at the end of the day. The drainage network, the pumps, the way your body handles salt and pressure, these aren't just about comfort or how your ankles look. They sit close to the systems that decide how well you age and how long you stay sharp and mobile. That's the last piece, and it's why any of this matters past tonight. That's next. So let's zoom out, because that tight ring at the end of the day was never really the point. It was a window. Everything we trace today, the drainage network, the 2 pumps, the way your body grips salt and pressure, none of it lives in isolation, and none of it is only about how your ankles look. These are among the systems that quietly decide how well you age. Start with that drainage network. It doesn't just move water, it's also one of the routes your body uses to clear cellular waste and carry immune cells where they're needed. And in the research, as this system slows with age, that sluggishness is tied to something larger, a low, constant background inflammation that scientists now call inflammaging, and increasingly see as one of the engines of aging itself. The puffiness you can see is the surface of a housekeeping system quietly asking for help. Then there's the pressure. Remember the very first number in this video? The tens of millions carrying it silently? That quiet rise isn't only a matter for your heart. In its 2024 report, the Lancet Commission listed midlife blood pressure among the modifiable factors that shape your risk of dementia, and found that nearly half of dementia cases worldwide trace back to factors like it, ones you can actually influence. Read that again. Not fixed, not fated, influenceable. The same number that opened this video is one of the strongest levers you hold for protecting the brain you'll be living in at 70 and 80. So here's what I want you to walk away with. The swelling was never the enemy. It was one of the earliest, most visible signals your body could send that the systems keeping you healthy are beginning to shift, years before anything shows up on a chart. Most people wave it off. You didn't. And that head start, more than any single tactic, is the thing that changes outcomes. Because these systems respond best when you reach them early, while they're still the most changeable. You're not behind. You caught this at exactly the right moment. If this is what you want more of, real research, pulled apart and translated straight, without the fear and without the noise, subscribe, and the next one comes to you. And tell me in the comments what your body has been doing that no one's taken the time to explain. I read them, and they decide what I dig into next. Because the goal here was never to make you afraid of your own reflection. It was to hand you the manual your body never came with, and to remind you that understanding what's happening under the surface is the first and biggest step towards staying strong in the decades ahead. I'm Sophia Hart. I'll see you in the next one.